Lend your ears, lend your hands, lend your movement, anything you can. Come to teach, come to be taught, come in the likeness and the image of God. 'Cause you can be like that, with all that humbleness and all that respect.
One of my ancestors, my great-grandfather was actually hanged over outside the GPO building for fighting the establishment that came here to start running this country the way in a different fashion. His name was Dunderley. He lost a lot of his people and my people back then, and I want to pay respects to him and those old chiefs that had to live that hard time and watch the whole world change in front of them, in front of their very eyes. We've had a lot of troubles. So, speak about corporatisation. We're struggling now with this so-called Native Title Act, which is a crock of shit, if you don't mind me saying that. It's corporatising my people into a structure that's not Aboriginal at all. It's a corporate structure that they're putting people through with these native title claims, and it's not a good thing. So they're expecting Aboriginal people to declare their traditional laws and customs and sign away their rights at the beginning to enter into a process that then acknowledges some type of native title, but they sign away their rights. So it's a genocidal act itself. I just wanted to let you know that it's a terrible thing that they're doing to us. The machine that taxes us and everything like that, they've been doing it to us for a very long time. I'm glad people are waking up to that machine. I'm very frightened of this corporate law and corporate world that our politicians are so leading us into. It's not a democracy we live in here, it's a corpocracy, where the corporations have influence over the politicians that run our country. And that's all I'd like to say, and thank you and welcome.
I just want to reflect on where we've come from. What was life like 5,000 years ago? We were hunters and gatherers, or hunters and collectors, my favourite band, weren't we? Hunters and gatherers. We'd go and pick fruit and catch our food. We were in touch with seasons, with the earth, with each other. Rules and laws were passed down through folk lore, L-O-R-E, around the campfire. Yeah? What about 500 years ago? We're in the middle of the agricultural revolution, where we thought it would be clever to do monocrops to feed more people. What did life look like then? Did we start to disconnect from where our food came from life? What about 100 years ago? It's looking a little darker, isn't it? The Industrial Revolution. We thought we invented steam. No, we just learned how to use it. But boy, didn't it send us into a spiral. It's where we started putting child labour into full effect. What about 25 years ago? We're in the middle of the service industry. So if you look at 5,000 years ago, we were very in touch with our food, with the land. 25 years ago, most people are working in the service industry. You know, when we were in Perth, we had breakfast with Max Egan, and we were right in the middle of the CBD, and he said, just look around. There's everybody walking around in dark suits, going into tall mirrored buildings with AMP, CBA, Westpac, whatever it is, all shifting digits in cyberspace. What are they producing? So where are we going to be in 50 years, guys? What's our legacy? Not looking real good, is it? It's not looking real good. And the common theme, of course, through this is the ruling elite. And I know that we're going to talk about that a little bit during the weekend. I want to talk about one word that you hold, hopefully, in your heart all weekend, which is the word volition. They talk a lot about it in Vipassana. Hypothetical choices and the actions collectively taken with more knowledge and ability. So if you hear some information throughout the weekend and it inspires you, then go and take some action with true volition.
This is the epitome of corporatism in Australia. And in fact, unfortunately I haven't included it in this presentation, but I have a clip of her father from 1984, Lang Hancock, actually talking about the need to forcibly introduce genocide of the Aborigines. and particularly those who had failed to integrate into the society that the Europeans had brought into Australia. He said, those that have integrated, they're fine, we can leave them alone. But those that haven't integrated, then we need to give them drugs so that basically they become sterile and then they'll just die out. Well, unfortunately, if we think that that philosophy has disappeared, then we actually need to think again. Because what we're going to see, I think, over the weekend is that this philosophy is very much alive and well, and it's actually been extended. Access to fresh water should not be regarded as a human right. What they're basically saying is that unless you are making a direct contribution to the corporatocracy, then what's your point? What are you doing here? You're just, in the words of Henry Kissinger, you're just a useless eater. This should be the wealthiest nation on the planet. It should be, because it has the most incredible plethora of natural resources, particularly rare earth minerals. So who thinks that Australia is the wealthiest nation on the planet? One person. So the public debt, this is the debt owned by effectively public office government and state governments. Nearly $400 billion, working out at about just under $17,000, this is in US dollars, $17,000 per person, for a population of 23.6 million. Here we've had people literally talking about how they can continue to screw the global population. And the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership are complete misnomers, because basically what it is, it's global governance by stealth. Because the whole purpose of these agreements is to establish a raft of corporate legislation that sits above all national legislation. So, for example, I know Paul is going to be talking about the tremendous achievements at Bentley in running off Magasco there. But Magasco now are simply waiting for TPP to kick into place so that they can then sue the New South Wales and federal government for loss of revenue. Yeah, we laugh because it's so outrageous, it can never happen. But it is, it's coming down the tracks at a phenomenal rate of knots. But it's something that we have to absolutely acknowledge. Because if we don't, then in a very short space of time, then state and national laws won't actually matter a damn. Because we will all be effectively subjugated to this raft of corporate legislation. And the purpose of this is actually to sort of strip the last remaining wealth out of nations and out of individuals and get them into the hands of a few people who run this globalist corporatocracy. Separated capstone is very important in the belief system of those who think they are the rightful rulers of a global corporatist fiefdom. What this represents is the knowledge and the wisdom of the few, never to be shared with the masses, under pain of death. And this is a belief system that is so far removed from anything that's out in orthodoxy that even if most people do stumble across it, then they go, no, that can't be right. That can't be true. Because we're literally treated like mushrooms, fed shit and kept in the dark. He said, we have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men. This is a cartoon that appeared in the US press in the run-up to the Federal Reserve Act being passed into law. And this is because the people who knew how the banksters operated could see what was going to occur. Once you gave the private banksters the opportunity to establish their control of the economy, then it wouldn't take them long to effectively get their tentacles around everything. Here is another cartoon There was this that appeared shortly after the establishment of the Federal Reserve. The Rothschilds, for billions a year as interest on bonds, I rent the human race the privilege of existing on my earth. Through the private central bank scheme, I'll soon grab the United States. Then I'll own all Christendom. Tsars, emperors, kings, and the people all must obey my orders, submit to my exactions, or get off my earth. All of the countries that have been targeted as the axis of evil all had one thing in common. They had economies that were operating outside of the central banking system. So you whip up this fervor of hate in your populations to get the mandate to send the private militia of the global banksters into these countries to effectively take control of their resources and establish a central bank. This document was published in September of 2000, and it's basically the blueprint of everything that has been happening for the last 14 years. And when you read it, you think, oh my God, I mean, this is like George Orwell on acid. Until you turn to the back page, and you see that there's 26 people have put their signatures to this document, and 13 of them went straight in to George W. Bush's government after he was sworn in on the White House lawn in January of 2001. The only reason we have to have permanent growth is to fuel the interest on the debt that's been created. Has anybody ever played this game before? And now they've introduced another version, not just based on a city like London or New York. Now you can go for the world, which is, of course, exactly what they're doing. And that mural that was being painted on this wall in Brick Lane, this is the finished product. It is the bankers playing their game for total control on the backs of the people. So what people don't realize is that 97% of all this stuff that is floating around in the economy, 97% of it, somebody somewhere owes interest on it. And it's all going one way. It's going to the banks. So that's what keeps us on the treadmill. You know, whether it's the personal loan, whether it's the student loan, the mortgage, it keeps us locked in to their version of life. Actually, it's not life, is it? It's an existence. It's an existence. It's a routine. Do you know what the Israelis called the recent attack on the West Bank, on Gaza? Do you know what they called it? Mowing the lawn. Mowing the lawn. This is the mentality that we're dealing with. It's not human as we understand humanity. Two of the fundamentals of humanity are love and compassion. And these guys who are perpetrating this agenda have neither. And of course, what they're trying to do is to create an environment where the people that are doing their dirty work adopt effectively the same mentality. As you know, many of the speakers through the weekend are going to be discussing, you know, this is becoming so obvious. It's becoming so apparent that we actually almost can't deny it, and we can't understand how other people can deny it. But yet, we are still very much in the minority. But that critical mass is perhaps coming much quicker than the establishment care for, which is why they're trying to put so much pressure now and labeling those who challenge orthodoxy as non-violent domestic extremists. Non-violent domestic extremists. David Rockefeller said, "We are on the verge of global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order." You know, and how often do we see people say, "You still believe in a new world order? You must be a conspiracy theorist." It's about trying to shut down the debate about the legitimacy of allegedly the attacks on ISIS. You know what ISIS stands for, don't you? Israeli state intelligence services. Ask yourselves this. We've got allegedly an Islamic terrorist group that is driving brand new Toyotas, wearing brand new Nikes, got the latest hardware, rocket-propelled grenade launchers. Am I missing something? Because I'd love to bring the British government down. Which fucking Amazon or eBay page do I have to go to order this stuff? Because these guys do. They seem to just be able to go on the page and order whatever they want. And they have the funding for it. I can't even afford a pea shooter. Something's not right here. And if it's Islamic State, why aren't they turning on Israel? Why aren't they using these resources to turn on the state of Israel, which is perpetrating the genocide on the Palestinians? The Israelis are not going to stop. And what ISIS is doing is not only getting rid of Assad, which is one of the last remaining non-Rothschild banks in the area, but they're actually creating the opportunity, ultimately, to establish the state of Greater Israel, everything between the Nile and the Euphrates. Meanwhile, they're presented as this great fear. And we can expect to see beheadings on the streets of London or the streets of Sydney. Bullshit. A writer on Freemasonry has to say, he says, Memphis Mitzrayim is a little-known Masonic group based upon Arabic and Egyptian magic. As such, they are deeply satanic and very powerful throughout the Middle East. Any Arab Mason who dares to disobey the edict of the top commander of Memphis Mitzrayim stands in dire danger of death. This group is very powerful and feared. However, their top commander is controlled by the top leadership of international Illuminized Freemasonry. It's all part of the same agenda. And how is that going to impact us? Well, let me tell you how it's going to impact you guys. The technology will come on.
Incredibly, for some time to come, Australians will have to endure more security than we're used to and more inconvenience than we'd like. Regrettably, for some time to come, the delicate balance between freedom and security may have to shift. There may be more restrictions on some so that there can be more protection for others. After all, Madam Speaker, the most basic freedom of all is the freedom to walk the streets unharmed and to sleep safe in our beds at night. So, Madam Speaker, creating new offences that are harder to beat on a technicality may be a small price to pay for saving lives and for maintaining the social fabric of an open, free and multicultural nation.
So you feel safer? Well, don't feel as though you're being singled out, because they're using different terminology. Of course, Queensland is on point here with the bikie laws. But it's the same the world over. It's the same in the US, in Canada, in New Zealand, and in the UK. It's all about trying to create this fear so that we can shut down the non-violent domestic extremists who have the audacity to challenge the veracity of this version of reality. Tony Abbott says that he needs to shut down freedoms to protect people from terror. As Mark said, this was a big trigger for a lot of people, because when people started to investigate the events of 9/11, then it became very evident that the physical evidence did not support the official version of events. And this was a significant trigger. And maybe it's deliberately so. So it's all about giving people an opportunity to step into a new reality. The question is, which reality are you going to step into? The one that the global corporatists want to establish, one of absolute abject control and slavery, or something else? And the reality is that which one we go to is very much in our control.
One of the people that I got to meet with was this guy. This guy is this guy's brother. That's Tariq bin Laden. And this guy also has a lot of other titles as well that I wasn't aware of at the time, including World Hide and Seek Champion 2001 to 2011. There's a lot of Ks, I guess. But so I got to meet a lot of people there that knew a lot of really interesting stuff. Robert Fisk met bin Laden, and he wrote this article in '93 that talks about bin Laden and how bin Laden was used. He was a CIA asset. His name in English was Tim Osman, and he was used by Brzezinski, who's the guy that's now behind Obama, with his intelligence to fight the Russians in an agenda to try and break down the Soviet state. Bin Laden was treated for kidney dialysis in July 2001, and it's well documented. It's covered in a lot of stories, articles, books, and it's my personal belief that he probably died a couple of years later, but there was an agenda there, and we were given bits and pieces of information that we were told that this is what's happened. We were given animated cartoons that sort of showed us this is what transpired, and showed photos that said, look, he's dead, he's gone, you know. And that was like what Ian's talking about, is touching on the agenda to roll out this legislation, the Patriot Act. And then, of course, we were told that he was buried at sea, which is not a Muslim tradition whatsoever. Buried at sea, no evidence whatsoever, and we had to dispose of the body out of respect. So the most wanted man in the world, no evidence whatsoever. The irony of it is the fact, of course, in hindsight, is they didn't have any weapons of mass destruction, but they had it used against them with depleted uranium and white phosphorus. This guy says, I have absolutely no regrets. And this guy, Donald Rumsfeld, when he was asked, where is the weapons of mass destruction? His comment was, they're in the north, south, east, west region. I don't know whether you remember that at all. This is the demonisation. This is to show you the reflection of the demonisation, because even the old people are getting terrified. Everyone's getting terrified. They're terrifying the pensioners. The Muslims are coming to take over your country. There's a representation there of Australia that they're saying that we estimate that the Muslim population is about 20%. In reality, it's only about 2%. Recent turn of events that's come about, where they had 800 police carry out a massive operation. Well, what they did prior to that is they, for the first time in the history of Australia, they elevated the threats, the potential threat of terror, of an act of terror occurring, to high, without any evidence. Then they carried out the raids, 800 police, with only one charge of a 22-year-old being charged, based on a phone call to a person that was killed a couple of weeks ago somewhere in the Middle East. He's had no access to any legal representation or visitation rights for family in that time frame. So we had all this splashed across the media, including this image, which was a plastic sword for decoration. So what they've done the same with the bikie laws in Queensland is getting rolled out on a national level, where they're saying that if you're classified as a low-level terrorist, activist, we have the right to remove your passport and remove any government benefits. Rolled out with politicians only given about 30 minutes to read an act before it's passed. So what they're doing in effect is the Bali legislation is about to expire, so they're bringing in the new legislation to override it without any sunset clause. If you see something, say something. No, I'm saying something. This was really interesting. People said Occupy didn't achieve anything. Well, it technically wasn't meant to. It was meant to be a reflection of the world awakening. And it was the first time in the history of the world that nearly 2,000 cities at a time gathered to say, hey, we're waking up. Yeah, so it's time to organise. But rebellion's not necessarily what you think it is. And any way that you can do it in your way to contribute, please do. The only solution at this point in time is for us to individually and collectively encourage ourselves and others to raise our consciousness and frequency. Do no harm, but take no shit.
It all stems from this stuff. What is money? But more importantly, what is money to you? So tell me, what is money to you? Paper? Vehicle? Does useful stuff? Choices? Freedom? An exchange? It's what? Poison. Ooh. Who thinks this stuff's worth anything? Who thinks it isn't worth shit? All right, there's a box at the front. As you leave today, just put all that cash in the box and I'll make sure it gets disposed of. Fear. The number one thing we all think about or feel when the subject of money comes up and not having it, the fear. When I first started in the financial game, if you want to call it, opening up a company, I read a lot of Robert Kiyosaki and other financial gurus. And one thing Robert talked about was that if you want to get a feeling of what money does to you, go to the bank, and if you have it, withdraw $5,000 in cash, put it in your pocket, and walk down the street. Creating new money. Absolutely. They use us as a vehicle to create new money, which they then turn around and lend back to us, which we have to pay back with interest. Essentially, what is debt? What is it? In real terms, what is debt? Absolutely. Yeah. I go to you, I say, I'm going to loan you $100 and you're going to agree to pay me back. Owing someone something. Basics, isn't it? So what happens with a bank then? What happens with a bank? If I'm loaning you $100, which is not really $100, and I'm asking you to pay back $100, what's going on there? But it's worse than that. It really is. Because then we have things called securitization. Does anyone understand what securitization is? Essentially, it's like this. So what was your name? Felix. Okay, Felix, I'm going to lend you $100 and I'd like some security on that. Because I don't know Felix. He could be a bad guy. So in exchange for that, how about you give me something worth $100? Say, for example, your nice gold watch you have there. Fair exchange. I hold security, worth $100. I give him $100 cash. He pays him back, give the watch back. But what if, in the process of me getting that watch, before I pay him the money, I sell that watch for $100 and I give him the $100. And I say, pay me back, $100 plus interest. What is that? Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? That's how a lot of banks create the money. You always hear Joe Hockey talk about, we've got to tighten our belts. The budget's is going to be terrible. We've got a deficit. We're, so many $1 trillion in debt. We're going to cut services to hospitals, increase taxes, sell all the assets because we've got to pay the debts, the national debt. Has anyone asked, who do we owe? Who do we owe? I don't think even Joe Hockey knows. Does anyone understand what happens when they raise the debt ceiling? They get authorization to increase the debt. How ridiculous. Increasing a debt, the interest of which they cannot pay back. It's insanity. Because really we should be asking, who is the real creditor here? If they're creating money with their fingers, who's the creditor? Are we? Are we the creditor? Are the banks the creditor? If I get a loan from a bank and I've created that money out of nothing on the back of my promise to pay them, who's the creditor? If they've sold my debt to get the money, to fund the loan, who's the creditor? Interestingly enough, we've asked these questions of banks and they never answer, ever. They want to rely on the fact that we think there's a loan and we should pay it back. And here's a contract. The key question to look at is who lent you the money? How was the funds created for the loan? Or who funded the loan, more importantly? But you want to start doing your own education. Because wisdom is about the correct application of knowledge. That is the key, the correct application. The right thing at the right time to have the right result. Our goal is to have everybody here challenging their debts, whether you do it through us or not. Because the banks can deal with one of us at a time. I mean, you've all heard of fucking Save the Whale Day. How about don't pay your mortgage for a month day? Imagine 3, 4, 5 million people stop paying their fucking mortgage for a month. What's going to happen? The fucking bank profit of $5.6 billion in 5 months won't be there, will it? How fucking insidious is that? $5.6 billion. Westpac, check it out. So everybody here who comes here, you now have knowledge and a responsibility to go with that knowledge to start pushing back, because we can only do it together.
I would like to tell you our sustainable living story. I would like to show you what's possible to achieve. I would like to share with you our ideas, experience, inventions. I would like to inspire you to live more sustainably. And I would like to empower you to make the difference. How do we compare to average Australian household energy consumption? So in our case, we are 20% of average. And we achieve that without compromising our comfort. What it means, our energy bill is about $40 a week. To give you an idea, our electricity bill per quarter is around $100. So you can compare it with your bills. And now we work out that the biggest chunk of energy actually goes into hot water generation. And we actually make our own solar hot water system from recycled materials, homemade, for less than $50. I will show you later on. So once this is actually plugged in, 10% of energy of average Australian household. So that's how easy it is, without compromising comfort. But here we can grow all year round. It's like a paradise on earth. And people don't appreciate it. When we arrive, we just realize how beautiful Australia is, how vast it is. And we also realize how wasteful the society is. It's unbelievable. Did you know that Australians every year waste on a food waste $5 billion? That's how much waste goes just into waste. That's more than army budget. That's more than we spend on all these iPhones and these gadgets. So the lessons learned is don't be discouraged by first rejection always fight for it. It's worthwhile. Yeah? That's true. Guess how much honey we harvested first year from one hive, from spring till late summer. Any guesses? How many kilos would you say? 20? 50? 3? 160 kilos of honey. Would you believe that? Suburbia is the best place for bees because they've got flowers all year round. And what's even better, it's organic honey because all these backyards, people don't use sprays and chemicals on their garden produce. So it's much better honey than honey from the countryside, isn't it? Yeah. It was dark like Melissa, and it was bloody good. For us, it's really important to live in a community because all our relatives are in Europe. But we don't feel lonely because we actually have a sense of belonging. We live in a small but functional community of 5 units. But we also know most of the neighbors on the street. And we do things together, barbecues, pizza night. And at the end of the day, what we want to show is that we achieve such a great lifestyle. We achieve great work-life balance. Because we reduce our living expense and we grow our own food, I don't need to work full time. I work just a couple of days a week or, casual, and have got plenty of time to spend with family. Have got plenty of time to grow more organic food. Do a lot of work for community. Do a lot of presentations and talks. So, we want to show, look, people, there is an alternative to conventional lifestyle, which is served to us by the system. And this alternative is actually simple, healthy, and happy. Are you with me? Here I would like you to imagine good news on TV rather than negative news. I would like you to imagine collaboration instead of competition. I would like you to imagine happy and healthy people. And if you can imagine that, it's possible to achieve, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to imagine that. Would you agree? Okay, so, it's we're living in such exciting times. There is such a bright future ahead of us. Be sunshine. Spread the message. Make the difference. Because, we need to really walk lightly on this planet. Yeah, and it's just we're living in such exciting times. I have to emphasize it strong enough. And I would like to encourage you to do whatever excites you the most, whatever you get most joy out of. Yeah, no point going to work and hate it. No point. We are really here to enjoy it. And I would like you also to encourage you to make your own utopia. Because life is absolutely beautiful. Thank you very, very much.
Does everybody think that the Commonwealth of Australia is a function of government? There are 2 Commonwealths of government. There are 2 emblems. Greg and I were talking about this. What's on the emblem of the Commonwealth of Australia? Yeah, no. That's on the emblem of the corporate government of Australia. If you look up Commonwealth of Australia, it's registered on the SEC as a business. It trades, as is the ATO, as is every state government and local government. They are businesses. What's the lifeblood of a company? Profit. So then the government, because corporations, what's corporation mean? Corpus is dead, ation is to speak. It's a dead man speaking. Corporations can only deal with other corporations. So that's when they then created you, which was what AB ran through yesterday, your straw man, your person, your persona, your personality. That's where your name will appear in all capital letters, at least your surname. Check your birth certificate out. Check your bank statements. Check the fines that you receive. Your surname appears in all capital letters. Capitis, diminutus, maximus. No rights. You are a slave. So who's the master and who's the servant there? It was known as the crown of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth. Commonwealth Games, the Commonwealth. Oh, we're all part of the Commonwealth. What do you think the Illuminati think the word Commonwealth means? What was the commoner? The slave, the peasant. Wealth is your sweat equity. Commonwealth is the sweat equity of the slave. You own nothing. What you own is the right of, now listen to this, the right of use of the title, and the title represents a dot on a map. That's why they can just kick you off your property whenever they like. What does it say? RP, lot. Lot on an RP map. Lot stands for location of title. Who's getting this for the first time? Who's a bit pissed off? You own nothing. The Vatican owns it all. So the reality is that when you consent, and you do it voluntarily, when you consent to be part of the system, you do it via voluntary means. Now, it might not feel like it. Who thought they had to apply for a tax file number when they turned 17, 18, 19, where it was? Yeah. Did somebody hold a gun to your head? Why did you do it? Well, we'll talk about why you did it. You submit, sub meaning under, applications, applicate to beg, to be under their jurisdiction. Juris is the law, diction is to speak. You voluntarily submit to be under their jurisdiction. That's what you do. How did they do that? So if you're going to start up a business, what's the first thing you do? You go to an accountant who says, hey, you need to set up a business or a trust or a sole trader or a partnership and apply for an ABN. That's how you have to do business in Australia. Why do they tell you that? Because they went to university, uni meaning one, versity meaning version, one version of information that is mind control to tell you what to do as good little sheeple. Make sense?
Isn't it interesting when you actually learn what words mean? Because you think they mean one thing.
So the average wage slave turns up to work at 9 o'clock if they're lucky. Most people have to get there earlier or they're fired. You get there at 9 o'clock and you work from 9 till 11 paying income tax. Income tax does not pay for infrastructure. It goes to the IMF to pay for the national debt. To who? Where'd the national debt come from? We'll talk about that later. From 11 till 1, you'll pay all the indirect taxes, and I'll talk about them in a second. So every time you fill your car up or you buy a loaf of bread and so on and so forth, you're paying indirect taxes. From 1 till about 4, you're paying your mortgage, your debt till death, or rent, which is somebody else's mortgage. From 4 till 5, there's a little bit left for you. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just a far more insidious form of slavery. That's what your day looks like, doesn't it?
4 to 5, you pay your credit card bills usually, electricity bills, how they're going up, all the rest of it. There's not many people left.
So we're going to talk about some alternatives, but the alternative is operating through a foundation, especially if you're in business for yourself. But don't feel that you're shirking your responsibilities to society. This is not about tax evasion, okay? You pay taxes every time you go and fill your car up, every time you buy a loaf of bread. And there are what we call compound taxes. So just look at a loaf of bread. It starts with a seed that's patented, that costs money for the patent. You then plant it. You then have the farmer who uses all his fuels, the patents on the tractor, on the motor, on the tyres. Okay? It then gets harvested. It then gets milled. It then gets sent to the baker and baked. And then there's the freight in between. Then there's the wholesaler. Then there's the retailer. How many taxes are in there?
Sales tax, GST.
So a $4 loaf of bread is about $3 worth of tax. When you fill your car up, do you know what? We've got a client, I think it's BP that he has. He's got 3 BP stations in Sydney, and he set up a foundation through us years ago. And he said to me years ago, I had a lengthy Skype call with him. He said, you know what, Mark? I think fuel at the time was $1.59 a litre. What is it now, $1.70 something? I don't know. I think it was $1.59 at the time. He said, you know what the raw cost of fuel is? 42 cents a litre. There are 7 taxes on fuel. 7. He said, I shouldn't have BP out the front. It should say ATO. AB's just going to run through here a great document. So if you are in the public and you have a tax file number or an ABN, this is part of the goods and services tax. This will show you what their jurisdiction has over you.
Yeah, it's one of the questions we get is, well, what can the tax office do to you if you're not in the tax system? Well, nothing. At that point, if you are completely 100% private. What we would then do is say, well, listen, if you're in the taxation system and you're worried about the ATO, you should be. You really should be, because you have to comply. Tax file numbers, straw men, you must, otherwise they will move you along and do whatever nasty things they say they're going to do to you, because you are in the public system with your straw man. You joined yourself to it. As an example of that, I'm just going to walk down here because I like to use the pointer. This is the current GST legislation, and I've read this thing from cover to cover. This is just one example of all of the taxation charters, okay? The Commissioner, who is the ultimate top of the tree, pyramid for the ATO, the Commissioner may disregard the scheme in making declarations. For the purposes of making a declaration under the subdivision, the Commissioner may A. Treat a particular event that actually happened as not having happened, and treat a particular event that did not actually happen as having happened, and, if appropriate, treat the event as 1. Having happened at a particular time, and having involved a particular action by a particular entity, look, it's highlighted, and treat a particular event that actually happened as 1. Having happened at a time different from the time it actually happened, or having involved particular action by a particular entity, whether or not the event actually involved any action by the entity. This is deadly serious. I didn't write that. That's the truth right there. It's just Google that. It's section 165.55. That's just on GST. You find similar stuff for pay-as-you-go. You find similar stuff for income tax. Okay, it is designed by them. It's their system to enslave you. They have complete 100% control. So that one is quite amazing, and we use it all the time, and people are shocked.
Is that part of a system you guys want to be part of?
Once you understand how this works, and if you read, so I'll take a step back. There's 888,000 not-for-profit foundations in Australia right now, as of the date of the, I think the last Australian Bureau of Statistics put it out. Only 177,000 are registered, to give you an indication of why and how that works. So why is it that every sports star or rich family in this country, i.e. the Salteris, why do they have foundations? Because they don't pay tax. Tax is for us, the sheeple, to pay tax. When you have enough money, you don't have to pay tax. Like
Kerry Packer.
I was going to say,
he turned up to the Commissioner and he said, well, why aren't you paying tax? And he said, well, why would I give it to you buggers? You don't know how to spend it properly anyway. Do you remember that?
That is a brilliant quote, and I should put that on there. But I was referring to Jabba the Hutt, Gina Reinhardt. So I was trying to be polite, but she is Jabba the Hutt. There is no doubt about it. And you have that scumbag Tony Abbott leaning in, trying to take his instructions from her, as Ian pointed out yesterday. Here's the thing. This is the aha moment. Okay, the paradigm that you have has to change to here, because we are so 100% focused and told that we must ask for permission. You don't have to with a foundation. You are self-assessable. That's the tax office term. Self-assessable entity. So when someone says, can I pay for that? I say, would you like to? Yes, we'll turn that around. I can. So I can pay for fuel, yeah. Can I pay for my, the groceries that I'm going to go and pick up? Well, the answer is, would you like to? Yes. Well, you can, because the aim of the foundation is to achieve the goals and objectives of that foundation. And what happens is you have two people come together, have a meeting of the minds. Actually, that wouldn't work. Steph and I came together, had a meeting of the minds, and we set up a foundation to achieve a goal. We wanted to achieve a goal to do something, and that could be free to shine or anything else that you're passionate about. So once you've done that, you then fall outside of, and you're outside of the jurisdiction. You are actually then able to do anything you like to achieve those goals. So if buying the milk and the bread and all the rest of it at Woolworths feeds you and sustains you and your family so they can go to school, so you can now go out and achieve the goal of the foundation, then it's sustenance. And sustenance isn't taxable. Now, if you happen to get some income, and income is taxable, if you happen to get digits, we call them digits because they're electronic digits. It's not money. You don't have dollars in your account. You have electronic digits. So if the digits come in and it's more than sustenance, than you need as sustenance, that's then surplus. There's no limit for surplus. You can have as much surplus as you like. You don't have to have a percentage that you give away. We give up to 50%. So that's our decision. But on average, most people do 10%, something like that. If you're paying 33% tax now and you give 10% away, everyone in the room, I would assume, would like a 22% increase on their current wage pay, yeah? It's not hard, it's not brain surgery, is it? So I don't pay my 33% or my 46%. I can do what I like and save and help people, and I've got this extra surplus here. You can have as much as you like, and there is no percentage number that you have to give away because it's up to you. The paradigm shift is don't ask for permission because you don't need to in the private. You do in the public, you don't in the private. You can ring the tax office and say, hey, I'd like to open up a not-for-profit foundation. Can I operate that way? They'll go, yeah, sure you can. We suggest you register it though. They do. And, oh, okay, fantastic. So anything else? Nope. Off you go. Done. It really is as simple as that.
Yeah. So the essence of the foundation is to sustain the participants, anybody else that works within the foundation and the foundation itself, and to give back. Is that a tax dodge? It's not. You're contributing back to something that you feel passionate about. So I guess what we're going to ask here is what legacy you're going to leave. You know, the essence of the foundation, as I said, is to sustain you, and whether that's food, your fuel, gym membership, holidays, whatever it takes to sustain you and keep you happy, but it's to give back. And for us, we're very passionate. Is Steph still here? I mean, Steph's an animal rights activist, big time, and so we give to Free the Bears, Sea Shepherds, a big one, and there's a couple of others, Charity Water, but our main one is Free to Shine, and I'm going to talk to Nikki very soon. And I can't tell you what an amazing feeling it is every time we send money off to Nikki. You know, a couple of weeks ago we sent her another couple of $1,000s. She's like, you know, so grateful because I sent it on the Tuesday. She said, that means Thursday, Mark, we can go and save another, I think it was 6 girls. So, you know, on those tough days, and we've got tough days, don't we, where it's hard to get out of bed and trudge off to work, when you know there's a deeper purpose to what you do, it makes it a lot more fulfilling.
As far as challenging authority, can it be done? The short answer is yes, it can. I've certainly done it successfully. Your strawman essentially is your agent in commerce, and we might talk about that or the strawman in those terms over the next couple of days, but it's your public entity, and there is also the private entity. So on your birth certificate and those of everyone's birth certificate, there's actually 2 dates. The date that you were born and came into the world, and you became you, essentially, and go home and check this. There is a date that you were registered. They're both on your birth certificate. Your birth certificate is your warehouse receipt, okay? It's your agent in commerce. It's your corporation. Doesn't matter which way you want to look at it. It's the public entity that interacts with everything else. So we'll go into that in more detail tomorrow, but that's the concept. And moving forward, it'll become more and more apparent to you that what a scam that is. And I was really pissed off when I found out about this. This authority is essentially just a concept. It's a social concept. It actually doesn't exist. It only exists because we all think it does, which then puts it into reality. Raise your hand if you do not know that the local government is not a legitimate organisation in Australia. It has no powers, none. Okay, so there's a few. Okay, councils are not recognised under the Constitution. Same principle applies. So how do they operate? They operate via statutes. And a statute is a rule. This is not verbatim as far as Black's Law, but it's the way I've remembered it. So this is how you're going to remember it too. It's a rule created by a representative governing body, and it's usually for the good of the general public, that carries the full weight and extent of the law when given consent by the governed. Okay, consent by the governed, that's you. Are they legitimate? The answer is yes and no. No if you don't want them to be, and yes if you do. Is that shocking to anyone? Has anyone realised that councils, they've got bylaws, all the other little laws they make, all the things, that there's no such thing as a bylaw. They can't make legislative laws. They can't do it. What you have to do is research and study and get your head around how the scam actually takes place. Because when you know how something works, you can then start to break it down from the inside if it's all possible. This first bit in yellow is maximising the amount of fines and other money penalties paid before enforcement action is taken. They tell you in their charter, in the first page, what the organisation is about, maximising the money penalties paid before enforcement action is taken. That's because if they can get you fearful and intimidate you enough and threaten you before they have to prove it in court, then their job is done. Okay? They don't like to have to go to court to prove it, number one, if you raise an argument about jurisdiction, they're fucked. They are, okay? It's as simple as that. It's these guys. It's a privately owned company. This is the Salteri family. And the Salteri family, if you, according to the BRW Rich 200, is the seventh. Yes, it's the seventh wealthiest family in the country at $1 billion. And that, again, that was a bit dated, so they have a lot more money than that at this point in time. But these guys get your money. So if you thought that you were paying your parking fine, and it was going to, it's going to go to the council and they're going to do stuff and fix the potholes and do all that sort of stuff, you're wrong. It doesn't go to them. It goes to a privately owned corporation. Does that piss anyone else off? So, what do you think happened on my first response? I'm going to read this to you. So we're writing to you about your contact with us regarding the penalty notice, yada yada. We examined the details of the penalty notice and using our review guidelines considered the issues you raised. Due to the circumstances, we've decided to cancel the penalty notice. You do not need to pay the penalty, and this is the bit I enjoyed. We apologise for any inconvenience this has caused. They go ahead with full knowledge of that. And that's when you can send them a fine. Remember this is another key point. The law was designed as a double-edged sword. The difference is you don't realise that you have one of those edges. Okay, you have the exact same right to charge people, for example, a politician. You can actually go to a justice of the peace or a notary and have a warrant for their arrest issued if you have a barrister and or a lawyer who would actually prepare the documentation the way they're supposed to be. We have both, by the way. It's a system designed by them for them. They do allow us to use it against them, but they don't tell us we can, and then of course the ignorance and the apathy and all the rest of it, the fluoride in the water and yada yada, the Ritalin for our kids, and ultimately you think it's just all too hard. I'll just pay the $55. Okay. So toll roads, Queensland motorways. I thought Queensland motorways were Queensland motorways. I thought they were the government. Queensland toll roads, all those sorts of things. I thought they were all the same. They're not. So that was my question. How can what is essentially a private corporation for profit be getting my revenue that should be going to the governments for paying, for example, for the roads and all those types of things? So, not unlike all of the other things we've discovered, we tend to get pressure or advice from the other organisations that if you don't tell anyone about it, we'll let you off. And in particular, the banks and the stuff that I did with my credit cards, I had them write to me and say, listen, if you don't tell anyone about it and sign this stat deck and the confidentiality agreement, we'll let you off your loan. So I did. And then I set up the website and told everyone about it. So that is what happens with toll roads. You can get out of tolls if you question the jurisdiction of the toll road operator. Now, these are just the fun things that we just laugh at because they're just so ludicrous. But coming back to what Paul said and what Ian said, the psychosis, we have this psychosis, it's an all-pervasive psychosis, and if you want an example of it, there's an example of it right there. Why is it 100 cops can control 100,000 people? We had this discussion with Steve the other day as well, and he was saying the crowd could tear them apart. They could, but they wouldn't. Why would you? Because it's not a socially acceptable thing to do, and it's not the right thing to do, and if you live by the rules of do no harm, then you can go to a football match and not have to bash the cops or go and attack them. If they're police officers or peace officers, then they're doing their role. But we are like the horse tied to the chair. We don't challenge authority. We're taught not to challenge authority. Okay, it's just ingrained with us. That's a great example. But most people are good. Most people are not going. There's no cops here. We're not bashing each other and stabbing each other and ripping off, everyone's purses and wallets and taking money, because most people have common sense and logic. Psychological fascism, if you ask me, is what they're doing to us, and they've been doing it for a long time. And what happens is they're escalating it. Ian talks about, and particularly tomorrow, he's going to talk about how they ramp up, what they're doing with their agenda. They hide everything in plain sight. It's like those contracts going to 10x, hidden in plain sight. They tell you, we're giving these family over here $332.1 million a year. Sorry, $323 million per annum. So what they do by the introduction of things like FLAD laws. And you know, how do they do it? They install someone like this knobhead, okay, and they are puppets. They are completely controlled puppets. There is no doubt that they are running an agenda. If you don't think the political parties have a hidden agenda, then you're in the wrong room. Because these guys have now, in Queensland, become dictators. They are dictators. Okay? They're not elected representatives. They're not someone who is accountable to the people. They are 100% totally in control because of the bikie laws.
Looking at self-sabotage, I looked at diet and all that sort of thing. And of course, when we look at diet, I look at it now, it's death by knife, food and ignorance. We're basically digging our graves with our teeth. Okay, so we're tuned to creation. So what I'd like to get through to you today is that basically we and God or Allah or source or frequency, whatever you want to call it, we are connected to that. If you look at it as a radio station, and that's 101 FM, most of us are tuned to 69 AM. So we're out of frequency to it. And as you've gathered by the bit of the conversation this morning or a few of the speakers, that's how they like it. They like to keep us out of that. I'll get into the politics a little bit later with it. Good. So for those that don't know, there are more neurons that go from the heart to the brain than go from the brain to the heart. In other words, our heart is our GPS. It's our inner guidance systems, and that's what we need to, of course, be listening to. We have more variety of living things in the human body, on the human body, than what there is on the planet. It's like we're a planet within ourselves. So, in other words, throughout our body, we have an ecosystem that is part of, or living microorganisms that is part of us. So if these microorganisms are designed to eat off us and we eat a diet that is unnatural for humankind, then the microorganisms metamorph. So the mice that are in us that clean up our cellular garbage now metamorph into rats. So now they've got a behaviour change, like that child that's got a behaviour change. So now if you've got a behaviour change within the system, what happens, instead of eating dead and decaying cells, what happens is they start to eat a little bit of you, another little bit of you, bit of the things they're supposed to eat, another bit of you. And then we keep doing that. Now we put medications, we put drugs and all that sort of thing in there. So now all of a sudden artificial sweeteners, aspartame. Have you ever Googled not the side effects there? It's about 82 different problems that it causes. So artificial sweeteners we'll come back to because I'm going to make up some stuff in a minute. But basically when we look at the bigger picture, instead of that clean lake, that alkaline lake where the microorganisms is a normal way for you know, that's their normal habitat, their normal terrain, now we've got a stagnated acid lake. We're buying all this. I mean, look, it's cheap and it's convenient and all that sort of thing. But these guys have got a lot of money and we complain about McDonald's and all that sort of thing. Do you know why they've got so much money? Because we fucking buy their shit. So it's time to stop it. You know, people say to me, where do we go? What's the first step? Stop supporting the companies that don't give a shit about us. And certainly stop giving it to our children. And that's the same with vaccination and fluoridation and all that sort of thing. It's aimed at dumbing down the system. This could be baby food, couldn't it? Puree, no fibre, all there, got everything in it. I mean, you're going to poison them sooner or later. I mean, this should be sponsored by the drug companies. They love all this sort of thing. But when you think about this, you wouldn't give this to a young child, yet when they get a little bit older, you do. What you are, when I say you, I'm not targeting anybody as such, or you maybe, but I'm not targeting anyone as such. So what I'm saying is what happens is this sort of thing, you wouldn't give it to them. You are literally fucking up their body. Remember that acid lake? You're giving them diabetes, you're giving them arthritis, you're making sure their nervous system doesn't function properly, you make sure that they've got behaviour problems. This is exactly what you're giving them. So think twice before you feed your children this sort of crap. Whereas the other side, we know that that's conducive to health for them. We are becoming, basically, these companies love it when we do this. And I'm surprised they haven't put out the junk food smoothie. Put it in a little can. I mean, well, it's no different to this, but this is basically what it is. No, it's got to that, hasn't it? Oh, is it clean? Are they, where have they been? Fuck, we come out of dirty vaginas, straight into a dirty cave, straight onto a dirty nipple, and that's how we had an immune system. You know, when they vaccinate a child, they give something like 25 at least different chemicals in there. And did you know that it messes up their immune system for life? For life. Not just for a few years, their immune system is never the same. I didn't vaccinate my children, and now we go out there and they're like, oh, but you know, you can't get into daycare. Shit, someone's got to stand up. Someone's got to say no, don't conform. David Icke, brilliant. Brilliant. When we look at that, all that is coming. Now, if your body has only got two ways, if this is fear, what happens is it's fight or flight. Everything's like, I don't know what's happening out there, but get ready, you know, digestion doesn't work. We wonder why we're overweight. Our digestion is shut down, our metabolism is shut down because it's thinking, fuck, there's a bear after us. Something's happening on the outside. Your body doesn't want to digest. It's like we might have to climb a tree. We'll just leave it there, we'll stick it on the arse and we'll come back to it later. We don't want to digest because if we digest, we might have to shit. And if we shit, something's going to smell us. It's true. So everything shuts down. We are in fear and we're storing it on our hips. Like I said, death by knife, food and ignorance. We are digging our graves with our teeth and planting flowers on our graves with the lies of our taste buds. So we want to get our body into the thing where it's actually functioning properly. Gratitude, love. Get into the right, be grateful. We've got to stop doing this, which is dumbing us down. Coherence means we're in tune. Coherence means that our GPS is working, our gut feeling, our intuition, we feel it, we know what we want in life. We feel it. So that coherence is where it wants to be. That means we're digesting and metabolism, everything is working properly. When we're not in coherence, our brain doesn't work. You know, I look at my kids and go, oh, what was your name? And at the end of it, they're like, you know, quite a bit into it, and the doctors are saying, or the scientists are saying, well, look, there's no real coherence between heart and brain. We can see that the graph is different. And one scientist sort of went over here and he said, holy shit. He said, no. He said, the heart knows it 6 seconds, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 seconds before the brain saw the picture, the heart already knew what it was. In other words, our heart can see at least 6 seconds into the future. Our heart knows already. It's really all about heart this whole weekend. Get back in your heart, get out of your head. Your ego costs you a fortune. I know I put mine out on the nature strip trying to get rid of it at the last garage clean out, and fucking not even the neighbours wanted it, you know, it's like I've seen it around. That food makes us feel good for that second because we're so out of heart. When we get into heart, we get into coherence, we don't want that. We're just happy just being. You know, when we look at what we need to do, firstly come from the heart, next get grounded, next stop supporting the companies that don't give a shit about us or our children. And it really pisses me off when I go into food courts and there's a big line at McDonald's and you've got 2-year-olds knowing the name of McDonald's. You know, I want McDonald's. I don't think there's any chip in there to begin with. You know, so we start supporting that. This is what's killing us. So we start to make the changes. Sadly enough, if we all unite and start to work together as a team, we'd probably be, you know, fined, assassinated, locked up. So you're the quiet achiever. So what I do is I support this, and I don't have to tell anyone, I just know I do it. And if you know you do it, and you know you do it, and you know you do it, we all know that we're starting to make those changes. They hate it when we won't comply. You know, they say, don't eat that, just don't eat that. Don't get vaccinated, don't give your kids artificial foods. So we're going to create new pathways within the system. Where did that just come from? So we look at, what's that? The more that you let go of the need to be the individual controlling the outcome, the more the field, which is self-intelligent, self-aware, self-transcendent, can move through you. When we look at it, we have the power within our heart. We are all just fragmented energy from the same source. We are, guys. And the woman's dream walks in. And the woman bowed her head in shame. And the dream said, why didn't you use me? And the woman said, I always thought there was tomorrow. And the dream said, we only ever have the moment of now. Everything comes from the moment of now. So why didn't you use me? And the woman said, you know, I didn't think I could. And with that, the woman died, and so did her dream. Don't let that be you. Life's too short. Don't let that be you. So we've got to stand up and make the difference and be what our children are looking for. Have the courage to do it. We're keeping an eye on the world. That's what the Freedom Summit's all about. It's getting out of ego into heart, looking at the truth. starting to research. When you research, you don't stop. It just keeps going and going and going. And how do we change it? We start to buy this instead of that. The way we consume, what we do, whether we get loans or we go with private foundations. I suggest all of you put your name on the list and get a private foundation. But the one message is to get out of your head and get into your heart, because each of you know that everything is being said, even if some of the speakers are boring. Everything that has been said. Where's Ian? Is Ian here? He's one of those fucking boring speakers. Where is he? God. He runs when he sees me. Where is he? Another one of those guys with the big old grey balls. Anyway, so basically get out and get into your heart. So,
if we know, if you listen to Sam, that water is life and we're all made up of essentially 98% water, and our cells, our blood, everything to do with it, you wonder why they would put a fluorotoxic poison into the water system unless they had a specific design or an agenda to achieve a result, and that result is to dumb us down. I mean, I think that one of the most important factors that you need to take into consideration, if water is life, why can't you put tap water into a fish bowl and the fish lives? Like, if it can't support life in any way, shape or form, nothing lives in tap water. It dies. So, conversely, when you put it inside you, what do you think it's designed to do? And why is it designed to do that? You can go into the conspiracy theories as long as you want, Agenda 21, all of the stuff that goes with it. But the fact is it's quite simple. Fluoride is poison. So, that it's a neurotoxic poison, and it's in your water, and it's in you. It's in every one of us here. They're banned at 98% of Europe. That's got to tell you something. So hydrofluorosilicic acid. I can't walk out and point, but if you take the danger, poison sign, and the skull and crossbones, and the warning, and the do not take it internally literally, then it's a problem. Now, don't forget, Roman talked about how he uses rainwater and his garden thrives. But when he uses town water, it just survives. Again, it's clearly evident in that example alone that town water is not meant to sustain life. This is what it was designed for. This was originally what fluoride is designed for. And then it is amazing to me that they can put that into our water and then tell us it's good for us. If the government was so worried about your health and keen to do something for you, why don't they alkalise the water and put vitamins and minerals in it? Because your teeth would be fine, of course. It doesn't make sense. They stick poison in it, and we are all told that poison is good for us. Well, actually, not in large doses, but little doses it's okay, because it won't kill you too quickly for them to go and have anyone to be held accountable for your death, okay? But it's killing us all slowly. We're not going to argue with them whether it's dangerous. We know it's dangerous. It's clearly evident on the bag. Just look at the bag. That should be evidence exhibit number A. What we're talking about is the forced medication of the population. So if you wanted to be medicated and you're enjoying the fluoride, great. You don't have to do anything. If you want it out of the system, we have to band together. If we don't band together, an individual is not going to do this. First of all, you couldn't afford the legal case in their courts. You forced it onto us. We didn't want it. We now have to remove it. You've forced us to remove it. So we are going to ask for compensation to remove it. So that's $15,000 to $20,000 per household. Okay, for those that can't read it, I, Anna Bligh, as the instigator of forced fluoridation in Queensland, give my personal guarantee that water fluoridation causes no adverse health effects. And in the event that it does, I will accept full liability and will provide financial compensation. So, the signatures, that's the state seal. That is Anna Bligh's signature. There are 6 witnesses on there. You might even see there's a phone number on there if you're smart enough to take a picture. He's 34 years at the National Cancer Institute. In point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer death, and it causes it faster than any other chemical.
Now, it's been interesting. Through this time, there's always been one really common theme that people believe is most commonly the cause of their stress in life. And that's always been money, finance, and it's been debt. So I really think the work that Freedom Summits and the Credit Liberation Foundation, everything they're doing is so important. Just helping educate people to liberate themselves from these very challenging systems we all get caught in. About how they can liberate themselves from the very real external shackles that the current debt-based fraudulent banking system places upon them. This is vitally important. So just as emotional resilience is essential to thrive in life, I'd like to talk about financial resilience as well. And financial resilience, as difficult as it first sounds, is really simple. And what I mean by that is financial resilience is when we can limit the amount of risk we have when we've over-invested within the current financial system. So it provides a store of wealth, a protection, a hedge against the real threat of a global financial system collapse, which we are very close to. We're certainly heading in that direction. So going back to the constant theme of money and debt being the cause of people's stress, this stress, of course, is due to a lot of inaccurate but common beliefs that we all have been fed about money, the financial system, and the illusion of how important money is to give us value, safety, and meaning in life. So it's completely inaccurate, of course, but very overpowering. So when the penny finally dropped for me of how the financial and monetary systems operate, it became very clear how that real money, sound money, such as gold and silver, can be an antidote to liberate oneself from the dependence to this system. So importantly, this provides more peace of mind and taking back control of your finances and well-being. So one very useful solution that we all currently have available to us is to lessen our reliance upon the current financial banking systems. So divesting out of the central banking game and into other asset classes such as precious metals, fertile land, of course, productive land and property is a very sound way, as Mark was saying, to get out of the stock market and into something real, something tangible which you can store and hold your wealth in.
Let's just dispel a few myths. How many people here think that we're running out of hydrocarbons? Nobody thinks we're running out of hydrocarbons? Okay, well, we might run out in about 1 million years. There is no shortage of hydrocarbons. The hydrocarbon industry knows exactly where the next generation of hydrocarbons is coming from. They're just going for the low-hanging fruit at the moment. Anybody got any idea when it was that Henry Ford was instructed to stop building the electric car? 1896. 1896. In the late 19th century, 2/3 of Ford's production was electric vehicles because the electric vehicle was clean, it was quiet, it was low maintenance. Obviously, it didn't have a long range, but then suburbia wasn't the sprawl that we know today. So the electric vehicles could be charged up in the home. The owner could drive the few miles into the city centre and then plug it in and then drive it home again. So there was infrastructure in place. The reason that Henry Ford was instructed to shut them down was because a certain individual by the name of Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, who had the monopoly on Standard Oil, instructed Ford to shut it down so they could establish this effective monopoly on using hydrocarbons for primary fuel source. Now, we're little concerned that the bulk of what we're paying is actually taxation. And this cartel of the motor industry, the hydrocarbons industry, the finance industry, and governments all collude to keep the technology down to such a level where they are effectively sucking our disposable income from us through taxation on fuel. And until such time as they find another way to raise taxation quite so effectively, then they will keep it where it's at. The 217-mile-an-hour saltwater-powered vehicle has been approved for use on European roads. Anybody heard about this? A few of you. Excellent. Okay. Well, I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to hear about it for much longer. Because once again, the cartel will find a way to effectively bury this. This is old technology. This technology is 25 years old. The oil and gas industry has a term for exploiting hydrocarbons in remote areas. They're called sacrifice zones. Sacrifice zones. Okay, so Queensland, particularly southern Queensland, is a sacrifice zone, as you'll see in a second. And they were pretty much getting away with it until they started to exploit the Marcellus shale play over here in the northeast of the country, which still by European standards is very thinly populated, but by US standards is a lot more densely populated than the Midwest. And it was at this point that there was a much greater awareness of the damage that this industry was causing. This is the area that's being exploited, much of it in southern Queensland. Of course, they're trying to get their bits in the ground here in New South Wales. Incredibly, there is a well out in the suburbs of Sydney in Camden, and it's already being identified that there are clusters of increased illnesses. And this industry knows very well the damage that they're causing elsewhere, but it's cognitive dissonance. They'll just shut their minds to it. What should be, of course, of greater concern is the fact that this spring-fed country is effectively being drilled out all the way down the eastern edge of the Great Artesian Basin and drilled into much of the catchment areas. And in fact, literally in the last 24 hours, word has come back from Chinchilla that the gas company there has drilled into an aquifer, and there's a blowout that's blowing into an aquifer. Unfortunately, the gas industry in this country has got its bits in the ground, and the only thing that is going to prevent this industry from spreading further is literally one of three things: removal of the investor will, removal of the political will, or people literally putting themselves between the trucks and the sites where they want to drill. But ultimately, the industry and the politicians and the gas companies don't really give a damn about weekend protests. The purpose of a weekend protest, obviously, is to raise awareness in the local community. But in the scheme of things, the industry and the politicians don't care. It's like petitions. They're a social safety valve. Because people think that once they've put their name on a petition or once they've turned up at a weekend rally, that's it, I've done my bit to show my opposition to this, and then it's back to the routine. This is the argument that says, well, it's already started, so we might as well finish. But the risk of that is that the Great Artesian Basin may not have too much life left in it. The unconventional gas industry is abstracting water from the Great Artesian Basin at a rate 6 times greater than it can naturally replenish. So where's the water coming from when the Great Artesian Basin is sucked dry? Henry Kissinger said, when you say control the oil and you control nations, control the food, you control the people, control the water, and you control all life. And that's the situation that we're getting into here. This is the Lang-Hancock philosophy of unless you are making a direct contribution to the corporatocracy, then you have no right to life itself. So this is the kind of socio-psychopathy that we're dealing with. But as I said yesterday, they are running scared. And that's why they're ramping up the game here. And that works in our favor, because these socio-psychopaths are now revealing themselves. We look at what's going on around the world. We're seeing the magnitude of the deceit, the corruption, the paedophilia, the militarization of the police, the dumbing down of the police. Someone was telling me, I won't tell you which state it was, but someone was telling me that a particular state in Australia, the police recruitment policy is now not to recruit anybody with an IQ over 104. And you think, for fuck's sake, how come nobody can see it? No, oh my God. You can't see 9/11, Bali, 7/7, how many? But they can't see it. And it doesn't matter how much evidence you put in front of them, if they can't see it, they can't see it. So all we can do is sow seeds. You've got to sow the seed and then walk away. Just leave it. Because then it'll germinate in its own time. You don't know exactly when it's going to germinate, but it will germinate in its own time. And then from that, a little shoot will appear. And then from that shoot, you get the plant. Well, it's the same when you're sowing seeds about the information that we've been sharing around this weekend. If people don't want to hear it, there's no point in keep thrusting it down their throat. They're just not ready for it. So you sow the seed, and of course, when they come back a few months later and say, oh my God, did you know that 9/11 wasn't perpetrated by 19 Muslims? Your challenge is not to go, fucking told you that. Your challenge is to go, oh, really? And what else? What else? This was basically their rules of engagement. You know, register on a 24-hour basis the total net conversion of energy. By means of the registration of energy converted and consumed to make possible a balanced load, provide a continuous inventory of all production and consumption, provide a specific registration of the type, kind of all goods and services where produced and where used. Provide a specific registration of the consumption of each individual, plus a record and description of that individual. And they were putting forward the very early hypothesis that unless you are contributing to their balanced, resource-based economy, you have no right to the basics of life. It's all out there. The left brain is the transmitter-receiver that effectively connects us with this physical, empirical, material realm in a very, very narrow bandwidth, the narrow bandwidth of all the senses. Very narrow visual bandwidth, very narrow oral bandwidth. There's so much more out there. We may catch glimpses of what the right brain is capable of, but we're not allowed to dwell on it. Number one, of course, is the vaccinations. You know that now in the US, if you die within 48 hours of having a vaccination, it was nothing to do with the vaccination. And they've just introduced the same in the UK. Rudolf Steiner 100 years ago said a way will finally be found to vaccinate bodies so that these bodies will not allow the inclination towards spiritual ideas to develop. And all their lives, people will believe only in the physical world they perceive with their senses. Of course, the word spiritual here is simply being used as a catch-all term to cover anything that can't be explained by physical, empirical, material, Newtonian terminology. On top of that, of course, we've got the Ritalin, the kiddie coke. Ritalin. In the UK now, doctors are being encouraged to prescribe Ritalin, particularly to the children of teen mothers from the sink estates. And in the UK, the state is offering £600 per month to a mother who has a child diagnosed ADHD and prescribed a course of Ritalin. 2 children, £1,200. 3 children, they're now classed as a super carer, so they get £1,800, £600 for each kid, so £1,800, that's about 3,500 Australian, and they're provided with a free car. Taxed, insured, and fuel provided because they're a super carer and they need the car to be able to get the kids around. Well, word, of course, goes around the sink estates because you've got this dichotomy right now where the average age at which a woman is having her first child is in their mid-late 30s in all Western nations. 2 reasons. One is economic. The other one is the incredible drop in fertility, particularly male fertility. And a big part of this is linked to guys carrying their mobile phones around in their pockets. We've got the other threat, of course, of the foods. In the US, they can now classify a food as organic with 10% contamination. In Europe, it's 0.17%. And the whole purpose of TTIP and TTP is to harmonize, and you harmonize with the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator right now is basically the US. So the establishment are exposing themselves. They're desperate to keep people locked in to the left brain. But, 4 years ago, I spent some time with these wonderful people, the Cuero, in Peru. Everything that is occurring right now is aimed at bringing people to a new level of consciousness. There's something happening which will aid that process that is external, but we can also contribute to this process by trying to effectively step away from the construct that's being created by those who think they are the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom. To bring about the change, we have to participate in 2 ways. And we have to participate in both of these. We can't do one without the other. Or we might, but it's not going to achieve the same impact. Their observation is that to bring about the change, we must visualize, we must take some time to visualize the future that we want to see, the legacy that we really want to leave for future generations. But whilst we're visualizing that, we shouldn't restrict ourselves. We shouldn't limit that visualization, because if we limit that visualization, we may actually be limiting what can ultimately manifest. Whereas what can ultimately manifest right now may be way beyond our bounds of perception. So we have to leave it open to something maybe even more magical. But the other thing that we have to do is we have to participate in trying to bring about the change. And as I said yesterday, there's so many things that we can pick up on. You know, whether it is the geoengineering, whether it's the GM foods, whether it's the fluoridation in the water, or the lithium, God forbid, whether it's the immunization, whether it's the use of Wi-Fi in schools. In my opinion, all schools should be hardwired. I'm not saying do away with the computers, but hardwire them. Don't flood the kids with Wi-Fi. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do, and we need people to pick up on all these things. Smart meters coming in at a phenomenal rate. If something is labelled as smart, ask the question, who's it smart for? Because it ain't going to be smart for you. So these are the two things that, you know, we have to, or the Quaero certainly suggests that we should do. And the other aspect of this, as Rudolf Steiner made the observation 100 years ago again, he said, he who would create the new must be able to endure the passing of the old in full tranquility. So every one of you is here because you know that something is happening. And the establishment know that something is happening. And the problem is, they don't know how to stop this rising tide of awareness. You know, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's Obama's mentor, he made the observation a few years ago. He said it's easier to kill 1 million people than it is to control them. And that might just be a little bit too obvious. I mean, they're doing it in some parts of the world. But you know, we do have an absolutely tremendous opportunity to reach the next level. Our challenge is to try to encourage people to see for themselves. You cannot tell anybody the truth. People have to come to their own realization of what truth is. I love that term, realization. Come to your own determination of what it's all about. You know, I am very optimistic. I actually have great faith in humanity. If we keep making the effort to bring about the changes, if we visualize the type of changes that we need to see, then that change will come. And it'll come in ways that we least expect. It'll come out of left field. You know, I have this vision of the celestial scriptwriters sitting around the table, sort of working out the script of what's going to unfold. And every time we think of what's going to bring that change about, they go, oh, shit, that's another one off the list, because they have to come up with something we haven't thought of. And it will come. It will come. And our challenge is to embrace that change, not to be frightened of it, not to be fearful, not to panic. But as Steiner said, he who wants to embrace the new must be prepared to release the old. Release the attachment to everything and just allow yourselves to surrender to what's going to unfold here. But contribute. Make an active effort to contribute. Many of you, perhaps all of you, already are. But just look at how you can take it to another level. And never underestimate the power of an individual contribution, because although we may think individually we can't actually do very much, but our individual contribution is part of the collective. And collectively, we are so awesome that those who think they're the rightful ruler of a planetary fiefdom are running scared. He said, what we do in life ripples through eternity. Thanks very much.
We obviously believe that children should be in schools, not brothels. So we identify girls at high risk of being targeted by traffickers. We get her the uniform and the bike. We fill a bag with books and pens and the school resources that she needs. And then we visit her regularly to help keep her safe and help keep her in school. So quite simply, we empower with an education in order to prevent sex trafficking. Well, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, estimates that more than 500,000 children were trafficked in the Asia-Pacific region alone during the first decade of this century. Trafficking occurs in 161 different countries, so it happens in almost every country on the planet, but it happens to at varying degrees in different countries, as you'll see. There's an estimated 20.9 million people globally living in forced labour, 4.5 million of which are sex slaves right now, and 945,000 of those are children. And it's big money. The profits from forced commercial sexual exploitation are $27.8 billion per year. And yet what the rest of the world contributes to combating sex trafficking is 0.5% of that figure. It's like the rest of the world isn't taking it seriously. Edmund Burke's quote has always stuck with me, that all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And when I thought of it in those terms, that these girls are being electrocuted, they're being tortured, they're being raped as many as 30 times a day because you and I are sitting here doing nothing about it, I knew it was time for us to step up. The first thing it taught me was that love is instant. You can love in an instant. The second thing it taught me was what real strength was. How these girls even survive this is beyond me. And the third thing it taught me was to spend my time doing something that really mattered. Tell me something that they needed, because they'd been through horrors and tortures that nobody should go through. So I thought they would give me something simple that me and I could come back and find 30 people and we'd be able to do this simple thing for these particular girls. And that's not what they said. They said that they had been rescued and they were okay. They had been rescued. But the day they got rescued, the mama-san of the brothel doesn't go without a girl. They don't think, oh, the girls have been rescued, let's close down. Oh, this girl's been rescued, we need to replace her. So the day a girl gets rescued, they just go out into a rural village and find a new girl to replace her. And these girls knew that. They knew that whilst they had been rescued, it had now been inflicted upon somebody else to replace them. So they said, Nikki, please go out into the villages and find those young girls and get them into school, because if you get them into school, they won't be trafficked. That was the sentence that changed my life, because I knew in every cell of my body that they were absolutely right. I knew they were right. I just had no clue how to do it. But that was what I had to figure out.
It's interesting when you were saying before about the industry and what a big industry it is. You know, in all of our study, it's actually almost about to surpass the arms industry and drugs, because you've got to understand that when they sell a kilo of coke, they sell it once. When they sell a machine gun, they sell it once. They can sell a child up to 30 times a day.
It used to be the third biggest organised crime after weapons and drugs, and now it's the second largest organised crime because it has surpassed drugs. She said to me, Nikki, would you sell my artwork in Australia? She said, I would like to use half of the money to pay for additional classes to prepare myself for my exams so that I'll be able to pass my exams. Oh, wow. And she said, and I want to donate the other half to Free to Shine to enrol more girls.
The thing I want to touch on as well is the fact that there's nothing wrong with having wealth or abundance. It's just in not using it as a weapon to control or manipulate or starve or kill people. What's happening with what's playing out at the moment is this control system and structure is an energy that's coming through. It's an energy that's playing out because we're allowing it to play out with our consent. Us giving away our energy to them, our currency, is feeding that. But it's also our lack of consciousness that's allowing it to do that, because we're being deliberately distracted by design and being manipulated to be like looking at this when this is going on. So it's just our consent and our lack of consciousness that it's allowing that to play out for us. And I think that's what's going to happen over a period of time, is that we've got this hierarchical structure that's in place where we've given away our power to this authority through manipulation. But we don't necessarily need that anymore. And I think because of what we've seen happen in other places, because of Occupy and also movements that are around the CSG, is that there'll be a decentralisation of power that occurs in the future, and all the power will go back immediately, and people will be giving all their energy and attention and resources to their local communities. Fluoridated water, particularly product that comes out of China, which is a waste byproduct of the mining industry, contains heavy metals. Apart from the fact, if you want to get into the debate about the difference between sodium fluoride and calcium fluoride, or the fact that only 3% of the water is actually consumed orally, that it doesn't make any sense. This short-term scarcity, fear-driven agenda to create short-term profits and not having any care for the long-term implications. There's something inherently wrong in a system or in a country where 98.6% of the people are against something happening, and the government decides to bring, like to the 11th hour, to bring 800 police in with riot gear to physically remove people from a site that are protecting their own land and country. It goes to show the people that had the courage to be there and stand up and put themselves in the way and say no. Because it's like I said, it's the energy as well. It's not necessarily the people. It's the fact of this obsolete energy that's coming through, of patriarchal energy that's going, we're just going to come and take whatever we want. We don't care what you think. Whether it's the raping of human beings, or whether it's and physical and financial harvesting of human beings, or it's the raping of the land. It's the same energy that's coming through. Yeah. Some people believe that the plant medicines are here to save us from ourselves and our own psychosis. But the Indigenous have known about this knowledge for a long time, including the Australian Indigenous, and that's where I feel some of the Dreamtime stuff perhaps comes through. But people like Ben Stewart talk about in their documentaries Kymatica the deliberate agenda not only to wipe out Indigenous peoples, but also their sacred knowledge, which posed a threat to those power structures. What's happening in the world at the moment as well is a reflection of us. The real revolution is our evolution of consciousness. And I want to encourage everyone to do everything within their power to do that for yourselves. But in doing that, contributes to us collectively.
But I've never particularly I don't swear to offend anybody, I don't talk about anything to offend anybody, but I must admit, straight up we'll talk about political correctness, and this is a kind of debate about the idea of Freedom Summit, then we'll talk about things like that. I've done many jokes about things like health and safety and political correctness, which I believe are small forms of oppression, just to eventually bring in a kind of police state, and there's sort of, health and safety regulations. There's older people here this evening, you would have remembered when you grew up there was no health and safety regulations, was there? No, they weren't called that. They were called common fucking sense. You young people, you've grown up with health and safety regulations, trying to get you out of this mindset. Common sense, I'll explain it to you. It's like this, See, there's a great big deep hole. Do you reckon I should step in it? No, I'm going to walk around the edge like that. Look at that. People these days going, fuck, where'd you learn to do that? Well, you see, my parents, they taught me not to be a fucking idiot. They didn't look after me emotionally, which is why I'm a comedian, but they did teach me not to walk into fucking holes. Australia, it's just everywhere. I used to like to go to the Netherlands. I've lived in the Netherlands for periods of time. See, they don't have... the EU is slowly putting health and safety in there, of course, but still, it's not an over-protectionist society like this one in the sense of extremities. I mean, you're in the Netherlands, they sell pot, they sell mushrooms. You're in a city, there's trams, there's buses, there's cabs, there's bikes, there's trucks, there's push bikes going everywhere. There's a road next to a canal. Is there a fence? No. God, Australia, you had a situation like that. You a big sign, big fence, don't go in the water, you fucking idiots. You'll all fall in the water and one of you'll drown. $50 fine if you go near the water. Get away from the water. Amsterdam, you know, is your bike wet? Yeah, you're on the wrong bit. It's easy to work out, mate. Old people have got better immune systems. There's old men in Scotland who've never eaten a vegetable. Not one. Their whole life drinking beer, eating meat, carrying on. Would you like some broccoli? Do I look like I've got a fucking vagina? Fuck off. And then they tell you, I saw an ad in Australia on the TV, I don't watch it, but one day I was at my brother's and was on, and gee, why do you yell on the TV in Australia so much? Why is there so much yelling? You probably don't even notice. You've been watching it for so many years, you're just conditioned. See, I've been in England for 15 years. I'm used to, welcome to BBC 4. Stephen Fry with French literature in modern Britain. Not fucking carpets, carpets, carpets! Calm down, mate, it's a carpet. I know there's not much to do here, but just get a hobby. Fucking carpets, come on down, we'll fucking see you. Just, oh, Jesus Christ, calm down. Your nervous system's fried, shut up. I had some show on the TV here, it's some 7-second rule regarding health and safety, with the idea that if your food falls on the ground for a certain amount of time, it's unedible now because the germs have got it, so it's time to throw it in the bin. The 7-second, how long's your cup keep? Your cake bin down there. Ooh, 10 seconds, in the bin! That's not capitalism to its highest degree. You drop your cake, did you? How long? 10 seconds? Take it away. We got some more, you know. That one's fucked. Wait till the apocalypse comes, then you'll eat your cupcake, won't you? You're eating the dead flesh of radiated men. How long's this body been here for? 2 weeks? I'm in! Oh, is he gluten-free? I'll tell you about the Sydney Harbour Bridge and about how we named it. Because that was a long day. Here we got a bridge in Sydney, goes over the harbour. I mean, probably took a little longer to name than the Great Sandy Desert, but... And the Snowy Mountains must have taken fucking ages to name them. Well, we just don't seem to give a shit in Australia when it comes to naming things. You look at all the states in Australia, you get the three of the English names, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria. Yeah, they said we can name the rest. South Australia, Western Australia, the Northern fucking Territory, is that alright? Well, we named everything, looks like I've got the rest of the week off. Fucking brilliant. I mean, one of the first times I came up to Brisbane to do some shows, I'm in the taxi, going to the venue, I said to the cab driver, we're going through the city, there's a big river there. I said, so what's the name of this river? He went, Brisbane River. I said, yeah, I thought it fucking might be. And of course we have the Opera House. And boy, that comes in handy. There's nothing Australians like more, really. A good fucking opera. Oh yeah, fuck the cricket, get me down to that opera. Let's watch this fat cunt sing. So, it's a cliche against the British, their food is shit. It's a cliche because it's true, so you must be enjoying food at least if you're staying away from the Fruit Loops and the nuts. Well, you know, I lived in Britain for 15 years. I've done many great things. I love their country. I'm originally from there. I feel at home in England, but the food, you know, it's a cliche, but it's fuck. I lived in Manchester for many years, in Mancunians. I like to have a baked potato with baked beans on it, with just a bit of grated cheese on the top. Stick it in a polystyrene tub, get a wooden fork, sit down, eat it in the rain. Lovely. Okay, look at that, Steve. It's lovely, isn't it? I'm going, no, it's not. It's the 21st century. That's fucking disgusting. My flatmate's going, what's wrong with you, Steve? Don't you like baked beans? Yeah, I don't mind baked beans. He goes, what? Don't you have them in Australia? I said, yeah, we have baked beans in Australia. We don't go out for them. Signs everywhere, signs telling you. Signs, more signs. Just driving around 60, 70, look at the fucking signs. What am I supposed to do? Stop it, slow down, just fucking... Sometimes in Sydney, it's just signs that go, slow down! I'm only going 50. Slow down! Fuck to what? Just get out. Is this slow enough? It doesn't even make any sense. Police targeting this, we're targeting that, we're doing this, it's illegal to speed in New South Wales, it's illegal to speed. Did you know it's illegal to speed? Of course I knew. I got a licence, I did the test. See, those questions were in the test. That's how you get a licence. Is it illegal to speed in New South Wales? Yes. There's your fucking licence. Then you get out there with your licence, they tell you it's fucking stop it. It's illegal to speed. I know, I did the test. You know what they're doing? They're giving away the answers to the test. We had to read the book. Now these little bastards just drive there. Did you read the book? No, I just read the fucking clues. Look. Why are they targeting us all the time? They put those ones on the motorways up here, those big New World Order ones, electronic ones. Police now targeting drink driving, police now targeting speeding, police now targeting seatbelt use, police now what are you targeting us for? Targeting me? I'm just fucking, stop targeting me. What are you fucking talking about? New South Wales, they can't get a bridge without hanging a fucking banner on it. This one I saw driving to my house the other day. Plan your corners. But before I leave the house? Or do you want me to do it while I'm driving? Plan a fucking corner. I've got a steering wheel. That's how I plan the fucking thing. I mean, I used an Etch-a-Sketch. I was fucked. There's another one. It's unbelievable. Make sure you leave a space between you and other cars. Yeah, I knew that. See, because if I didn't leave a space between me and other cars, I would be the other car. That's how the cars are moving, the space bit. We worked that out. Stop fucking targeting me. Just go to Ireland. Please use your seatbelt. Yeah, targeting. My favourite one was targeting seatbelt use. Why? Who's driving around in a modern car without a seatbelt? Who's just driving around going ding 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 ding. Can you hear something? Ding now, I'm too busy playing in corners. What the ding 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 ding. You don't have to fucking target me, you'll hear me coming. Ding 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 ding. Here he comes. My favourite one, police now targeting tired drivers. That's everyone coming home from work. They must be busy as fuck. Pull over, pull over, pull over, pull over. Fuck me dead, there's heaps of them. Pull over. How do the cops get home from work? They must be exhausted, walking around with all weapons on in the United States. Fuck me down. I've been targeting all day. I might drive home. No, you won't. Don't drive to the shops in your dressing gown, you'll be fucked. Here she comes. Get on the ground, bitch. Get on the ground. Wake her up. Wake her up. Taser her. That'll wake her up. It's too much insanity. They have these ones up here. Do you want to be late or do you want a crushed skull? I think I'll go for late. See, balance is being whispered in my ear. Somehow we need balance. We can't keep just attacking the system. It's not going to work, do we? So we have to actually go inside. We have to do inner work. That's what I've discovered. I was supposed to be doing inner work for years. I was smarter in my 20s, but then I got involved in the world. Now I have to go in again. I have to go in and deep, and that's what we do. We can't get out of the system. We can't. We're going to stop the system. We can't. Just have to we have to get out of it. Deep inner work, and also just small forms of rebellion. It's easy because we can't have a revolution because that means we'll all have to get together and have a meeting. That won't work. You know, it'll take us ages to get here. 60, 40, 80, 70, 90. Oh, fuck me dead. I'm late for the revolution. School zone. Oh, fuck, I'm never going to get there. And then when we do get here, then we'll have to sort of, you know, try to agree on something, and most of us couldn't even agree on what DVD to get out, so that's not going to work. Then we can't have a violent revolution because, you know, we haven't got any weapons. They took that off us in the 70s when they rigged that Martin Bryant false flag thing and said, hand in your guns, we'll give you fucking black and decker work, mate. And we went, fuck no, yeah, that'll be fucking... now we've got no weapons because you can't even have a glow stick without being a terrorist, so... Because, you know, if the general public has weapons, that makes us extremists, like these Muslims who live in tents. They're extreme. I love the way you listen to the news, eh? We're attacking extremists. How are you attacking them? Oh, we've got F-16 Hawk jets laden down with 500-pound depleted uranium shells, and we drop them on the extremists. It's good to be up here with the moderates. You know, they've got the extremists down here. They're in their fucking tents with their second-hand Russian rifles from the 70s. Tink! Tink! And we're up here with the stealth bomber gun, these fucking extreme bastards. We can stop corporate stuff, we can have a revolution. It's easy to stop corporate stuff, you just don't go. Most of you probably don't, but the problem is we need to speak to the mainstream. See, you're not the mainstream. I come from death metal world, so I used to think anyone that had a normal pair of trousers on was mainstream, but I'm just going, it's not. It's a mainstream. They don't go anywhere the Matrix doesn't tell them. That's why you never want to get famous through the system, because you don't have fans, because they're the mainstream. Just, are you good? Yep, we've been told you're good. Then you disappear for 6 months. Well, I forgot about you because we weren't really into you anyway. But we've got to make those people say, we need to get rid of, say, you get rid of Starbucks, KFC and McDonald's, you could get rid of it if you just didn't go. We wouldn't have to have a revolution. You just don't fucking go, and then like a flower that doesn't get water, it doesn't get cash, it just vanishes. And then it'll just vanish. It'll just simply fucking vanish. And that'll be a great revolution because we don't even have to do anything except just not go. You don't go. It's easy, isn't it? It's just... And then it's like voting. Just stop. Imagine if no one shows up. Where are they? We're just at home. I tried to get here, but the school zone was enforced. So if we don't go to McDonald's, and it would just shrivel, wouldn't it? And then, of course, the powers that be, the corporate structure, would understand that there's a singular ideology going along among the people. So then they'd go and get the cops, they're sort of their corporate guard dogs, and they go, they've got some kind of idea amongst themselves. They must have a group. They must have a fucking group. You better get out there and disgruntle the group, go and find their leaders, and we'll go, well, we haven't fucking got any because we haven't even met. We're going, where are the leaders? We're going, I don't know, mate, I'm just sitting at home. Making a sandwich.
You people drive safe home, and as we say, when you get home, cherish that beautiful place that nurtures you. And a lot of our collective consciousness comes from this beautiful land. It carries our spirits, our dreams of past and future, and they're the places that we connect. Sometimes we go home from these things and feel like I was in such a good place. How do I connect? The earth is your portal, this land is your portal to each other. Let's connect. Let's keep connecting. Let's keep sending this ripple. This track's the title off our CD. It's called Message Stick in traditional